Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.
Audio rolling. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And it's a little cold for you, but you know what we do in Detroit? We ready for all of this, tackling all of this and getting through how we need to, because we get every season for every reason, and that make us more resilient. For all my people outside of Detroit, y'all know we love Detroit here because it's Detroit is Different. And today I have a very special guest, a guest that does a whole lot in community. Another brother, like young brother, but still active with younger people, actually. And he definitely comes by way of somebody, a friend of the Detroit is Different family. The good brother G-Mac connected us, but he's connected with G-Mac. He connected with JoAnn over at Detroit Sip. He connected with Black folks. And we love that Legacy Black Detroit. And he actually has a project all about Legacy Black Detroit. Toby, how are you today, my brother?
Yes, sir. I am still learning. I appreciate that intro. You made me feel really special over here. My self-esteem is booming.
I love it. And you got on the medallion, taking me back to my Awesome Dre days. Hey, Awesome Dre, I know I owe you and Booger Call. We're going to get to all of this in that breakdown, red, black, and green. You know what it means, man.
Yes, sir. Dr. Kafense, he was the one that designed it. Mm-hmm. I wanted to make sure that when I came on a Detroit is Different podcast, that I'm representing everything that I'm connected to in Black Detroit.
I love it. And actually, when Kafense was here and Baba Malik, it was a whole industry connected to medallions back in the day that I'm going to attribute to a lot of people. So, you know, as that movement, 88, 89, 90, 91, there's a lot of money being made off of making medallions that Black folks was getting down with. But here nor there, let's get a little bit into your Detroit story like we usually do. But before we even kick that off, you have something about a Detroit story, man. What's this project you working on? We're going to expand into it more, but it is something where you're in this world of film, but introducing to so many people really a lot of the backstory of one of the legendary things of Detroit. I'm talking about Paradise Valley. There's so many discussions about that now as I-375 seems to become walkable again. But let's break it down, man. What's happening?
Yeah, so, man, I appreciate the introduction into the story, into the film. The film is called Walk Through the Valley. It's a documentary about Black Detroit. Now, we spend a significant amount of time talking about Paradise Valley, of course, our Black business district that hosted hundreds of businesses. We spend a significant amount of time talking about Black Bottom, which was the residential district. With that information, I'm going to let the scholars handle that because, trust me when I tell you, Jamon Jordan, Sharon Sexton, Professor Herb Boyd, Dr. Claude Anderson, they do a tremendous job of explaining all of that information. And for everybody that's curious about it, everybody that wants to know the backstory of how we got to where we are currently, this film covers it. We've been working on it extensively for 7 years.
Wow.
One of my mentors in the beginning phases, we tried to finish it in like 2 years. But my mentor, Dale Rich, he told me, if we're not going to make something comparable to Eyes on the Prize about our great city, then we shouldn't be doing anything. And that caused us to go back to the drawing board and expand and extend the story out. We want it to be an educational tool for DPSCD students. We want the students to have profound, visually and auditorily stimulating information about their local history, something that not only can they aspire to with the greatness of a Paradise Valley, with the unification of a Black Bottom, but also know that they can come over any type of adversity and continue to rise like Detroit always does, because Detroit is different.
I love it. And we're going to get into all of that. And then also, Dale Rich, you said that's one of your big homies. Dale Rich, hell of a photographer. I need to get him in the studio sooner than later. Also a Central Trailblazer, so this neighborhood definitely is of that. And
wow, let's go. I didn't even know you was connected to them.
yeah, man, heck of a dude. He's the person that told me how to get that gateway to the Burton collection at the library, which I
Yes.
hope opens back up sometime soon.
Absolutely.
And so many other political discussions. But let's get into your Detroit story. You and your people. How did your family come about to the city of Detroit? Are you first generation, second, third? What about Detroit?
So from what I know, I've learned more this past year at our my mother's family reunion. So my dad's side, they're from Alabama,
Whereabouts?
Talladega.
Okay, where is Talladega, Alabama?
I have to have that discussion with my aunt, and she can
Okay.
expand that information a little bit more. I still haven't been. The only trip I've ever taken to Alabama was to Dothan, Alabama, to talk to one of the scholars in the film, and Wally Moo Ed Vaughn, which of course was the former owner of Vaughn's bookstore.
Oh yeah, and heck of a legend in so many things when we think about organizing on so many
sir.
levels. And yeah, you got Ed Vaughn in the doc. Yeah, that's heavyweight right there. Shout out that whole Vaughn family and what they've
Absolutely.
done for generations of turning people on to so many things. As yeah, Vaughn's bookstore was powerful.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so your people, Talladega, Alabama.
So that's dad's side. And then eventually we came to Detroit. Now we came to Detroit when my grandmother was younger, of course, with my dad and my aunt. So she moved down here. And then from there, we just spread our roots.
What was it? Was it the work? Was it other family up here? What was it that led to that journey?
So I think it was more my grandmother just spreading her wings. Yep, my grandmother just spreading her wings. She valued education. Of course, she valued her children. And I think so on that side, I think that was the beginning and the origins there. Now, on my mom's side, it is interesting because at the family reunion, we extended the information. Well, they extended the information and found out that we came from a Boykin plantation. So South Carolina, the family that, quote unquote, owned us, I would say imprisoned us. We were prisoners of war at that time, was in South Carolina, the Boykin plantation. And eventually the mother was Elza Boykin, eventually had children, and those children spread throughout the U.S. Some of the children came to Detroit, and from there, my grandmother was born, and through my grandmother, the rest of us been here in Detroit for an extended amount of time.
All right, so from South Carolina to Detroit then.
Yep, from South Carolina straight to Detroit.
Now that's interesting because as we talk about the patterns of like all my Detroit is different interviews, your family is the first family where I've ever heard someone from South Carolina making their way to Detroit, because the Great Migration patterns usually align so many people from Detroit are from Alabama and Georgia, like abundantly. You know what I'm saying? But when you get into like the Carolinas, a lot of those people are like in Jersey and New York and further like East Coast, like just where the migration patterns obviously follow a lot of the railway patterns. You know what I mean? So like you're the first family from South Carolina, so that's interesting that they made their way to Detroit from South Carolina.
Yeah, super interesting. They of course maybe had pit stops, and certain people stayed in a lot of those areas. At the family reunion, I met people from D.C., people
East
from
Coast.
Jersey.
Yeah, East Coast.
Right.
Yep.
But for whatever reason, we ended up here.
So yeah, so some of your family, you got some East Coast family, definitely.
Yep, I met them this past summer. Very good people. Very good people. I played a practical joke on one of them. I had on a different shirt than everybody else.
Yeah.
So he's like, you're not part of the family, are you? I was like, actually, man, I am now. Do you got a shirt that I can wear?
Hilarious.
He was like, yeah, well, I don't know. I was like, man, just give me a shirt and I'm going to hang out with y'all.
Hilarious.
So I played that joke for about 15 minutes. He shortly realized that I was playing with him after a while. But yeah,
that's funny.
That's me trolling that East Coast family you're talking about.
So now let's get into the Detroit roots. What neighborhoods did your family on the mom's side and dad's side, where were they at when they settled? Where did they go?
So mom's side was East Davidson area.
Okay.
Yep. And eventually they moved west and came into Schoolcraft area. So like Schoolcraft and Hubble. When I was a baby, I was on Lauder and Schoolcraft. And then as I got a little bit older, we moved a little bit up the street, a little bit west to Longacre and Schoolcraft. And then we went from Schoolcraft in the Southfield area to Southfield and Grand River area. And my mom is still there now.
So, all right, let's talk a little bit about that East Davidson area, because I think that this connection it was a good amount of black folks there at one point in time, hence the Sojourner Truth homes. Like, people talk so much about the Brewsters and what the Brewster meant. The Sojourner Truth was like the first, and Jamon did the whole settlement about it with the mayor, where they were talking about, like, okay, this was like one of the first housing projects, as they say, for black people. And that whole footprint, when we think about like East Davidson, Mound, like, it's a pocket of black folks that have been over there for generations, like some of that up that way, like on the lip of Hamtramck, but in that community. Your people, what was it, that neighborhood? What do you remember? Did you ever go over there? Did your people still stay over there, like, when you were growing up?
So I don't remember anything about the area, but I remember going back and visiting my cousins that still stayed in the area.
So you had people over that way?
Yeah. I used to have to go back over there, and I used to hate going over there because all my cousins could fight better than me.
It's definitely a hands-on.
It was super hands-on. But
it's a hands-on East Side community.
But I loved when those cousins came to visit us, because anybody that I had a problem with, they now have to contend with those incredible fighters in that area. But it was, in terms of me remembering it personally, no, I wasn't there because we had already moved to the Schoolcraft area. But we did visit a lot because we still had so much family over there.
All right, and then you said that was that area, and then on your dad's side, what neighborhood did they settle?
Yeah, so my dad, when he would tell me stories, about like the Collingwood area.
Okay, so that's like closer to this way, around Central. So when I hear Collingwood, I immediately think Dexter, Linwood, 12th Street, 14th, my neighborhood, sort of.
Yeah. So my dad would tell me early childhood stories there. And again, when I got older, when we would go visit, we would have to visit family and friends in this area. Funny story, and I thought about that story on my way over here. I was 23 years old when my dad died, and I started to venture into things I ain't had no business venturing into. And somebody from over here that was a cousin that I didn't even know was making calls to my mom saying he shouldn't be over here. Why is he over here? And in the middle of doing something I ain't had no business doing, my mom calling me like, why is you on 14th? I'm like, what? How you know?
Yeah.
Right? So, that was a funny story about the ties to this particular area when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah. It's definitely it's a plethora of things you can get into over in my neighborhood, and in that, sadly, is definitely a lot of things that I don't think a lot of people, especially early 20s, should be getting into. But it's a lot of cool things over here too. But also, like, kind of like the familial attitudes that existed even in that 2000s era, and even to today, we kind of know it's like, they ain't from around here. Even if you black, it's like, they ain't from around here. You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly what it was. So so that was my dad telling me about early childhood for him and his family. And then they stayed in the Schoolcraft area right near where my mom's and,
That's
that particular family. Yeah, they both went to Cadillac together. Funny story about how my parents met. And big shout out to my aunt, Miss Lynn. She's been telling me lately to make sure that I expand my network and I show people the great things that I'm doing. That's the reason why I'm here mainly. I'm really humble and shy and introverted, but I selectively extrovert myself when needed. But anyway, back to the funny story. So my mom and my aunt were good friends in 6th, 7th grade, and my aunt would constantly tell my mom about her big brother. And conversely, my aunt would tell my dad about my mom and, her really pretty friend that he should meet. So my aunt connected those two, and I'm here because of that connection.
So your
at Cadillac.
So your aunt takes credit of the matchmaking.
Yeah.
She was a matchmaker.
Yep.
Okay.
So she was the matchmaker that led to me being born. Big shout out to my auntie. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here right now.
And I'm sure that your parents probably had different takes, like, well, especially a man. Man was like, you know what I'm saying? I saw it. I had all the sauce. But your aunt,
For sure. For sure.
laid the bricks for what could be opening up.
Yeah.
So in that Schoolcraft neighborhood,
Yeah.
that's where you grew up, cut
That's
your
where I
teeth.
grew
So
up.
I'm thinking like that's Cody, that's Redford, that's possibly Cooley. Like it's a lot of options. CMA. Like what was that neighborhood like growing up?
So it was interesting, man. When I tell a lot of my childhood stories, I realized that my childhood was centered in village community. 7, 8 years old, I used to walk to Superland grocery store and buy groceries for my grandmama, buy cigarettes for my auntie, stop at Ashton drugstore to pick up medications. At 7 to 8 years old, I'm doing all of this walking around my neighborhood. Literally, if I was acting up on our block, Longacre, neighbors would tell my mom, or neighbors would verbally get me together. So that old school, traditional community of the neighbors could get at you, everybody's watching, everybody is kind of like covering you in safety. I grew up in that, but at the same time, it was the 80s. So we know what was popping in the 80s. It was what I refer to as the biological attack that was placed on the black community. And in that Schoolcraft area, it was very heavy. So I remember that as well. So not only do we have the positive components of community, family, safety, but we also had this crime, biological terror attack that was placed on us that caused a lot of well-meaning, well-intended people to morph into something different and create a lot of chaos that we know existed.
And it's interesting you bring that up because my interviews, if people go through that Detroit is Different archive, my interviews with first, let's go to great interviews too. I like them all, but I like a lot of the interviews. You know what I'm saying? It's Detroit is Different.
Let's go.
But, so Charlie Beckham, when he's speaking about being in Rosedale Park in that era and kind of like being a father to his daughter and what that was, DeJuan Dandridge that runs Black Leaders Detroit, being in that same community and just like watching it shift from like more what was familial to the street culture that became more pervasive even in communities like that. And also Councilmember James Tate, as he opens up and kind of shares in that same community. And that community, even to this day, like you see the structures of the homes there and everything, like it's a beautiful housing stock over there.
Yeah, for sure. Big shout out to DeJuan. DeJuan, I've been trying to get in contact with you. I need you to show up to our event.
Okay.
But yeah, so they hit it on the head because my experience definitely had both components. It had all of the positive aspects of who we are, but it also had the negative aspects of who we morphed into because of systemic biological terrorism.
Yeah, and what was that like being a kid, kind of like witnessing this transition as it's happening?
I didn't look at it as a transition because it was simultaneous. Because even though somebody may sell drugs, somebody may use drugs, somebody may be violent for whatever reason, you still see the other side of them, which is fantastic. It's still somebody that'll pay for you to get some ice cream. It's still somebody that'll walk you to school. It's still somebody that'll make sure that you're not bullied. So I look at it this way. I don't view us as being naturally inferior. I view us as a great people that something extremely negative happened to. So while this person is a great human being, this really bad thing has happened and created a program to turn them into something that they're not really in the core of who they are. So one example that I like to give is the environmental shaping that was going on at that time was the older gentlemen having the nice cars, having the big wads of money, having the fresh gym shoes, et cetera, et cetera. So what we used to do was we would imitate them by getting a $5 bill and then putting Monopoly money up underneath it to make it look like we had a wad of money. And we would imitate their swag. We imitate the way that they talk, the way that they walk, because that was the pinnacle of success in this very limited interpersonal environment. So because we view that way, it caused us to naturally incline ourselves into that type of direction. And that's the negative component, because that lifestyle, of course, is only a couple of destinations that it leads to, which death is a major destination, jail, or being strung out.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. As I say, you know, the campaign hats, the top 10 Adidas, gold ropes, and obviously, you know, tracksuits, Sergio Tacchini,
Come on.
Come on. Adidas. I mean, I got a Sergio Tacchini right now because of that era.
That's right.
I think, and
I
this
used to love the Fila jogging suits, by the way. Go ahead.
Fila's too. Yeah. It was something different because I'm young in that era too, and my perception of what's going on with my limited understanding as a kid, it was very much, I think you said that wonderfully. Like, you still see vestiges of community, but it looks, you know, something is happening here. Hence, these impacts in our community have existed and have been pervasive in most generations, as I consistently say in Detroit is different, like for so many times, that the design of America is for white men with property and businesses. And the further you get away from that, the functionality of quality of life is not going to function the same. And in this, our journey here as Black people has definitely been something that has been completely a sign of so much triumph through the tragedies that have been oppressed upon our people.
That's right.
By systemic racism, by oppressive racism, by direct racism, by indirect racism, by let's come up with the adjective, and you can end it with racism and any negative dynamic of it, because it's not designed for the functionality. Similar to the analogy I often say is, if you running low on antifreeze in your car, you can pour some water in it and kind of get up the block. Right? We've been pouring that water into the antifreeze of this Black community inside this American lexicon for years, generations, centuries. And the dynamics will sometimes shine through just through the brilliance, I think, of our community, our creativity, our culture. With it, it still doesn't take away from the challenges in the functionality of some of this. So that's why, like, your work in community, working with the young brothers and so many things, and even projects like this, is such a testimony. And even when people ask me, like, hey man, you doing this? It's like, if I am not going to stand in this position, or a shout out to the good brother King Harris, if I'm not about to stand on business in my community, then who is? And that's how I feel. And that's not necessarily a challenge for others to be in this space too, because their functionality is different. But I want to be that. I think it's so dope that it right here at a neighborhood where, like, I mean, even up the block, they just particle boarded up the house on the corner, and people broke in there to just find some shelter, you know, for the past couple of days, because it's been freezing cold here. And you hit that in that reality. Sometimes families will be there. And in the middle of the block, it is a production studio where the whole world can connect with it, and people from across the world have connected with it. It means something to me, not just for the little homies, but even for the big homies up the block for me.
That's right. That's right, man. It's a weird juxtaposition because you have both realities operating in the same space. And I like the word that you use, which is functionality, because a lot of the negative perspective and the negative outcomes and actions that we see have a function within an institutionally deprived environment.
Yeah.
So you may view it as, okay, why are they so violent? Why are they fighting so much? Why are they stealing? Let you go for days at a time without eating and see if you won't steal from a store. Let you be bullied by people in the area that's been traumatized their whole life and they're misplacing their aggression upon you, and see won't you use violence to protect yourself as a mechanism. There's functionality in our dysfunction. So therein lies the need to realize that this came from somewhere, identify that place where it came from, and replace that with the system of justice, and watch how we flourish. Let's take our mind off of what's directly in front of you, and let's go deep into the layers, deep into the core, and actually get to the root of the problem that needs to be fixed, instead of blaming the victims for their victimization.
I feel that. Now, in this same space, you and your journey through school, what schools were you going to?
So I went to schools in that area. A lot of them closed down. I went to a school called JAC. I went to Dawson for a minute. I went to VTAW. VTAW was Schoolcraft closer to Evergreen.
Yeah.
VTAW was a super fun experience. But it had a lot of that functional dysfunction that I'm mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, VTAW, and shout out to everyone that we've had some of those stories. It's that you gonna have some kids from the Mo up in there.
Hey, listen, bro. VTAW was straight up East Side High. You hear me? It was fun though, man. Some of my best friends I got from that school to this day. One of my closest homeboy, he actually passed away a few years back. My son's middle name is named after him, Marquise Thomas. That was my friend from VTAW. So, yeah, I got family from VTAW. I saw quite a few things, some of which I won't say on air.
Yeah.
But what I noticed was that what they did in school was a product of a lot of the dysfunction that they had to deal with out of school.
Yeah, definitely.
So instead of school just being a safe space just to grow, it was a place to vent the frustration. It was a place to misplace the aggression that they didn't even know that they acquired from trauma.
So in this same space, so VTAW high school.
Oh, so high school I went to after VTAW. My parents like, all right, we tried public school. No,
We
let's
can't
stop
do
that.
it no more.
You going to Benedictine? So
you went to Benny.
I'm a Raven, bro.
Okay, so for people that don't know, there is and that's like it's so interesting because like a lot of the systems of schools have been so transition, but for like I would say like maybe up to like the early 2000s, there was a strong and even further back, like presence of parochial schools. So like, I mean, when we think of like DePore, I mean, Brandon Cotton basketball had me in the DePore's, you know what I'm saying, game. And shout out B Cotton, and you know Benny and
Bishop Borges,
like and these being institutions of blackness at the time were black influence there. And I don't know if a lot of people know that some of like a lot of the attorneys, a lot of the a lot of politicians, like when you ask the black men throughout the city, it's like, what school you go to? The chances of them saying UAD, Benedictine, Bishop Borges, DePore's, the probability of that, if they're like somewhere between like late 30s to mid 50s, I would go as far as to saying it's like a 2/3 probability that that's what's happening.
Wow. So you just validated a thought that I had. What I noticed going to Catholic school was that we had better institutional resources than our peers did. So a lot of my friends from VTAW that went to Redford or Ford or Cooley, I would see them kind of trail off academically, whereas we weren't necessarily given that opportunity because we had access to the resources that those schools provided. Now, I'm not saying that our DPS-CD schools weren't great. I'm not saying that we didn't have great teachers and influences, but what I am saying is from my personal experiences, I saw the outcomes, and because of the difference of that Catholic school to the public school in certain environments. So, yeah. I never thought about it and with that precision, but you just validated an idea that I had.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm speaking from like, I don't have the stats, but just from the people I know. Like, I mean, you look at the judges, you look at the attorneys, you look at the politicians, and you ask them, hey, what school you go to? You know, and then if they did go DPS-CD, like the probability of them being Cass or Renaissance is extremely high, possibly King, but like the people
What school would you go to?
I mean, I graduated from Northwestern, so like the Northwestern people, it's like, hey, where we at? You know what I'm saying? Now in the 60s, certain things transition, but like the same transitions through, like I would say, like the charter school movement that have transitioned a lot of schools even impacted those schools. So like even what school looks like today is so different than even that era at the time impacting those institutions.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I say stays the same, and this was from my experience at VTAW, even though the school didn't have a lot of resources, the teachers there were amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, like Coach Brown, Miss Mays, some of the teachers that really like poured into you, not only with the educational factor, but also love. I'm seeing that in the schools that I work with currently. I see it at Wayne Elementary. I see the love that the teachers pour into these students. I see it at Duke Ellington. I see the love that the teachers pour into these students. I see it at Dawson, at Paul Robeson, Malcolm X. Every DPSCD school that I've ever volunteered for or worked with formally, I see a certain love, and that is the continuum. And because of that continuum of that love and that investment in the children, we're not in complete chaos.
Yeah.
Because them children know, at least when I go to school, I can get a hug, I can get something to eat, and the teachers ain't go beat me up.
and I like that. So from Benny, what was your experience at Benny like?
It was dope.
Okay.
It was dope. So again, lasting friendships, bro. In fact, another one of my best friends, Vondell Williams, is our operations manager for Building 7 Media. Building 7 Media is what we're doing the film through. So Building 7 Media, we call it B7. I got on the 7 hat, representing. But yeah, one of my best friends from high school to this day, I get to work with them, is actually my daughter's godfather as well. So played sports there. Short, so you probably wouldn't think about it, but I played basketball. That was my favorite.
What years?
94 through 98.
Okay. So what was that like? Because also those leagues are like a different type of competition too. Shout out Be Easy or Braylon Edwards, because after a while he ended up finishing at one of the parochial schools. So like the leagues there, it's like you would play like the black schools and the white schools and like the different. What was it like playing in that league?
So it's funny that you say that. It was interesting because you had to adapt to the schools that didn't look like you.
Yeah.
So you couldn't play as physical, you couldn't play as rough because they was gonna call everything on you. They was gonna get the benefit of the whistle. Yet you still played in the neighborhood with the kids from Cooley, with the kids from Henry Ford, with the kids from Redford. In fact, if you was really about that competition, you was going around the city looking for the good competition on every side of the city, east, west, south. No matter what, these were still your peers.
So
even though you grew up in the hood, you just, for whatever reason, went to a Catholic school.
So, like, as far as the fundamentals in basketball has completely shifted these days. Completely shifted these days. So from what it was then in that era, like 90s, definitely. So like 90s basketball, I'm thinking, that was when, that was like Willie Green era. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he was a beast.
Oh man, he won a Cooley Cardinal legend. So that era of ball over to like, to today, I think it was probably closer to that with like focusing on shooting as far as like space on the floor. But 90s Detroit basketball, high school, that it was some gunners in that era, man.
Man, we had some beasts, okay? I mean, Willie Green was a great one. It was a guy that I played with, and he don't get enough love, but he was really good. His name was Khalil Taylor. I take the position that Khalil could have made it to the league if not for an environment that wasn't necessarily conducive to his growth.
Yeah, and then like I guess you could speak on this because this is your time too. Tractor Trailer.
Man,
how
beast.
solid. I mean, I did see him play in high school.
Yeah.
But and rest in peace. But what was it like? Because to me, I guess I didn't really get the. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so guys like that, even though they were in the same city, they just was like so legendary that they seemed like they was just above everybody, like they was in the clouds. Dudes like Tractor, Maurice Taylor.
Yeah.
My personal favorite was Rashad Phillips.
Rashad, I don't think he.
My goodness, that brother right there,
Yeah.
man, he was just special.
I don't think he gets the credit he deserves to this day. He did the Point God podcast with Baron Davis a couple years back, where Baron Davis was just talking about like how many NBA players were like picking up Rashard's moves and just the politics of things. Which this is really going back. This is going back to when the you probably remember this. Magic Johnson had a round ball classic that he used to do at the Palace of Auburn Hills.
That's right.
And they stopped that round ball classic for other things. They were like, oh man, that was where you go and they take your ACT, accordingly. Allegedly, yes, let's say that. But I think it was just that, they didn't want to support what Magic was doing, running concurrent against McDonald's and everything. But that's actually where we saw Kobe Bryant play for the first time. And Rashard tells the story of how he gave Kobe more buckets than he ever thought. And I was at that game. I ended up getting autographs of I couldn't get to Kobe because everybody else was getting Kobe. But it's like, I did shake Kobe's hand then. I was a kid, but that was a heck of a game. Rashard gave Kobe the business that game.
Man, that's the fact that you shook Kobe hand. That's something. Man, Detroit is different.
You got that right.
That's literally my second favorite athlete of all time, only behind Muhammad Ali.
So,
but, my favorite ball player for sure.
Okay, so in that time, from high school, where do you go with it?
Basketball or
just period? Where you go?
Okay, so high school, like I mentioned, I played sports. I developed a really cool friend group, and my friend group was super cool because we were anti-popular, and that made us popular.
That's funny, especially if you playing on the basketball team. So you kind of already are popular, but you anti-popular.
Anti-popular. We loved the Wu-Tang Clan. We used to dress up in army fatigues when everybody else was dressing.
You was that kid.
Yeah, we was that kid. We had the one brother that was developing knowledge of self.
Okay. You
right.
Had a god in y'all crew.
Oh, come on. The God. Shout out to Damien. That's my good friend and good brother for many years. He was the first one to start introducing us to reading books about our history and culture and stuff like that.
So y'all was giving people the math and the science, so they was like, oh, this guy. And this is concurrent at the time. Like when people watch the Wu-Tang series on Hulu, like it's a movement that, and I like a good amount of that, especially like for a young person to go back and watch it. It's so weird because it's like you watching something you lived. So it's like, oh, that didn't really. And it's like, you know what? I just got to pull back. But it was a movement where it was some Wu-Tang, like Wu-Tang became something huge. But running concurrent with that was also, it was No Limit. It was Bad Boy. It was Death Row. It was still other vestiges of the Black experience happening in hip hop.
And we had all that in our group. So our group name, we wasn't a gang or anything like that. We just was a group of homies that had diverse talents, had diverse likes. Some of our friends liked Master P. Some of our friends liked P. Diddy. Some of us, the majority of us, liked the Wu. But we called ourselves the Odyssey. Okay. So a lot of them brothers, still my good brothers to this day. So from that experience, high school ends, and now it's time to get into real life. My journey took me to Ferris State for school. It was
Ferris?
Because one of my friends in the Odyssey, my man Benson, he said, "Yo, you can get in here. You don't have to have the highest ACT or anything like that." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So you going there? He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I'm going there too."
Okay, and Ferris, for people that don't know this area, so Ferris State, and shout out Khalid Muhammad. Every time I think of Ferris, I think of Khalid, and I think of the collection of Black history artifacts. I forget the professor's name up there that turned Khalid on to all of this. But Ferris, for people who don't know, it's Michigan. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, when you live in Detroit, you can sometimes disconnect, even Flint a little bit, maybe even Grand Rapids. Ferris State is like, oh, wait, we in Michigan. So how did you even adjust to that feel?
Man, I love that question. So it was the first time coming from Detroit, which is 95% Black. It was the first time that I learned what the word minority meant. So my first day walking around campus, I said, oh, this is minority. This is what they mean.
Yeah.
So that was a very interesting experience. And for me, I was really immersed because at one point in time when I couldn't afford the tuition, my guidance counselor, Sharon Bell, I call her my white mom. She actually let me live in her basement.
Wow.
On a farm in Big Rapids, Michigan.
Yeah.
So I had a for real Michigan experience. I'm talking about fresh milk, fresh butter, snacks from the farm going to school with.
Wow, ain't that something?
Yeah, super interesting. Because a lot of times when you get into culture and you get into history and you get into your ethnic group's experience, people look at that as anti. But for me, in my experience, it's been anything but. My experience with Sharon Bell, being my white mom, a lot of the children that I've mentored have been white children. In fact, One of them, my man Francis, he came all the way from Vancouver to stay with me for 2 summers in a row to work with me and the youth programs that I was doing, et cetera, et cetera. So my personal experience is one of diversity, and it's a testament that just because you love yourself does not mean you hate anybody else.
Yeah, I've said that because people be like, oh, he blackity black, and it's yes, I guess I am. I'm pro black because I am black, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm anti anything else. I often say that, but when it comes to observing the history of America and the atrocities of our people, I have to recognize that. But also, shout out to Piper Carter, as I'm learning more and more about the journey of the Black woman. I'm recognizing the atrocities that a lot of my people as in Black men have, put Black women and other Black men in compromising positions over time. So like in it, I have to look at the whole picture and be honest. Now, a lot of it I think is because of responding to the traumas of something, but it still doesn't change the reality of it.
For sure.
To be pro-Black does not mean you anti anything else, but I also gotta acknowledge what the real is in reference to history when it needs to be acknowledged too.
Oh man, see, I love that. See, now we getting into some real meat and potatoes because I love the way you said that. You didn't have to give a disclaimer for me. Mm-hmm. Oprah would often say, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
There's a missing component to that.
Yeah.
Hurt people that they're able to hurt.
Yeah.
So because you're going through this trauma, because you got all of this pain, you misplacing your aggression. So it would go from a man enacting aggression, pain, and hurt onto a woman. Then it'll go to a woman enacting pain, hurt, and trauma onto a child. Then it go to a child enacting the same thing onto a smaller child, and then it just becomes circular.
Yeah.
So if we go talk about all of that, I would love that conversation to be had because the only way to fix the problem is to deal with where it comes from and to create a cure that substitutes and counters all of the negative action that we've seen and that you just mentioned.
I love it. You just broke that down where I'm taking that game from it moving forward because you just definitely made that plain.
Oh, bro.
So from fair estate and definitely like a farming experience. So I know that just opened your whole mind up because for people that have never actually been like on a farm, like we have urban gardens. Farms are roosters, scents and smells that you probably aren't used to, looks and feels and touches. What leaving Ferris, where did you move?
So I came back home to Detroit, of course.
So coming back, I'm guessing this is like early 2000s then.
Yeah. So my dad died when I was 23. So we talking about 2004. Came back home shortly after that.
Wow.
It was, I always say that my dad was my guidepost. Even when we weren't getting along, I was still trying to prove him wrong about something that I wanted him to be impressed by no matter what.
And you're still building on this journey in knowledge of self and enlightenment, but also now you have gone through the collegiate process as well. And now you're dealing with the grief of losing a parent, and that's heavy.
Oh, man, it was super heavy. I was spiraling because my guidepost was no longer there. So I no longer had that direction. I no longer had that North Star. Okay, you do this. So that was very, very painful for me. Mm-hmm. And I saw that it had a tremendous impact on my family in general. So that was around the time that I was in your neighborhood doing something I ain't had no business doing.
Yep.
But fortunately, my father's network was still looking out for me to make sure that I wasn't going too far off the path.
So in that, here back in Detroit, and it's so unique because that's early 2000s. That's the ascension of Mayor Kilpatrick, a different energy kind of in the city, a different feel. It's crazy to be like, man, that's like 20 years ago. But
I know, I'm smiling thinking about it. Yeah.
How did it feel coming back from Big Rapids? And I know the grief is there, but also we're human beings, so we're experiencing different things. What was your take on like what you wanted to do? Did you see yourself as saying like Detroit's gonna be my home? Did you see it as like I see some opportunity in this city under this administration? I like where things are going. What was your take as far as like on Detroit at the time?
I wasn't thinking about the socio-political environment at all. What I was thinking about was, okay, my dad isn't here, so I got to find a way to take care of myself. So I was thinking about entrepreneurial activities. I was thinking about starting businesses, and I was very ambitious. I wanted to do multiple things that would generate income.
So it's interesting that you say that, and it's not just you; it's so many other people that it's like. So your presence of mind was on, I want to start a business here, but your presence of mind wasn't on like evaluating the market sociopolitically, like what's going on here. And I'm just reflecting on this because it's many people that are like this. It's like, I want to start my way, shoot this path without like observing what's happening in the market. Clearly I'm a marketing guy. So, I always think like, don't people, I used to be like, don't people? Nah, sometimes people are just like, let's get active. So what were your business ventures you were thinking?
So I wanted to start a clothing line.
Okay.
Yep. I wanted to start a clothing line called Street Dreams Clothing. So I liked the song. I was a big Nas fan. So the Nas song Street Dreams came to mind. So me and a good friend of mine that was an artist, my man Kali, he was in the Odyssey. Shout out to the Odyssey. He drew up some detailed kind of like cartoons and also logos. And we started putting that on hoodies, on coats, on jackets, and we developed a little bit of a buzz.
How did you go about distribution? And this is like early social media days, so I'm thinking like Black Planet, MySpace, like it wasn't like today where, it was, hey, payment options online. People were like, I ain't gonna put my card online. You know what I'm saying? What was your, how did you market it? Where did you distribute it? How did you sell? Was you out the trunk, like Too Short? How did you go about it?
More so out the trunk. Now, to go back to marketing being something that should have been a staple, the only thing that I was marketing myself to was the young ladies that were showing me immense interest because I was so ambitious. So once that got into the fold, everything kind of went haywire.
So you were like, you was like Jody at the beauty salon.
Come on, bro, come on, just like that. You hear me? So what?
Like, look, this will look good on you, sister.
So now I got to kind of retract something that I said. I said I didn't observe the socioeconomic environment or the sociocultural environment. I did in that respect. I noticed there wasn't a lot of me. I noticed there wasn't a lot of younger, ambitious, somewhat smart, somewhat decent-looking, whatever guys for women to gravitate to. I noticed that a lot of my peers was going to jail. Some of them were dying. So I took the position that I was looking out for my female community by allowing myself access to several of them and allowing them access to me.
Let me say this.
That's where my mind was.
Let me say this, my good brother Toby. A young man, and it's many young men that do have that same ambition, especially in their throughout life, but definitely if you're a young man in your mid-20s, that can possibly be a test of discipline and self-control as well,
man. So
please let's pick up from there.
So yeah, that was a derailing experience for me, to say the least. And now my dad isn't there to put the reins on either, so it's out of control. You hear me?
It go from finding somebody that's a customer to finding a business associate to finding someone to invest in to finding, oh man, I done bit off more than I could chew.
You see? So I was biting off way more. It was an interesting time, an interesting experience. But had I not had those interesting experiences, I wouldn't be able to tell the young men that I work with currently how to avoid those particular pit stops.
And this is the other thing, men, young, old, whatever. We got our own ego. So we hear the story, we listen to it, and it's like, I'm still going to do it. But then it'll be like in the back of your mind when you touching the stove, seeing if it's hot.
Come on.
So they may learn, like, it may have took you 30 days to learn it. They may learn on day 28. And actually, them extra 2 days.
Huge difference.
Exactly.
Huge difference. My cousin, Mark Armstrong, me and him, we joke about this quite often. The popular album at the time was the Black Album from Jay-Z. And this song that he had called Allure. It's one part where he says, quote, "Still I know how this movie ends, still I play. Starring Roland Hope Vito's way," end quote.
Yeah.
We know how this movie go in, but it's so alluring that we can't not get involved with it.
Very much so. So now I even know, like, we probably crossing paths. That's like Black Album era. Like, man, that's That is the State Theater. I forget what was Alter State era.
Yeah.
Man, oh man, that oof. Rest in peace, Proof, man. I remember them eras, man. Being in there with Denny Brown and all of them dudes, man. Back when Denny Brown and them dudes would be around. And yeah, man, I remember that. That was the Good
St.
Life
Andrews. That was the
Lounge
place
in
we used to hang out. Yep.
Andrews. Yep. I'm you taking me to it. I feel the white tee on me.
That's right. That's right.
So from there, now where's your footing at?
So now at this point, I'm dealing with some of the ramifications of not constructively doing everything the way I need to, and I'm trying to find my footing at this point. Mm-hmm. So eventually, everything came to a head, and that led to me going back to the very basics. So I mentioned before that I played basketball. I was heavy into sports. And so after working at a factory closed down. I go through some other experiences. I said, man, I got to get back in school. But I want to make sure that I go to school for something that I really, really enjoy. How can I work in the field of athletics? And that led to me going into a school in Rochester, Michigan called NPTI, the National Personal Trainers Institute. And from that school, filling out resumes and doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of getting myself recruited, I went and got an entry-level position at a place called Impact Basketball in Las Vegas.
You know what's interesting about that? Because you go from that other world, because this is the other thing. You go from the world of where you like, okay, I learned my lesson with women. And the minute that you think of
I never said I learned my lesson.
Okay. But you were learning the
I was
lesson.
learning.
Let's say that. But physical trainers, and I'm saying this, shout out to my homeboy, like Big Brother, Mark Maceo. That's a physical trainer. It's like physical trainers that are men just have the label of, and with a lot of stereotypes, some of it can be true, of like, that dude just trying to, it's like, let me show you how to squat, sister. And it's like, oh, here we go. Here we go. But I'm just saying that then you go into this realm.
That's hilarious.
But I'm just throwing that out there. I'm throwing that out there.
No, for sure. So I didn't necessarily, I never would take advantage at work. Mm-hmm. That wasn't my experience.
You was always a professional.
Yeah, I tried to be. Now, it was one particular sister that I worked with. It was difficult. Yeah. And, I would say she made it very difficult for me.
Got you.
Yet, but I didn't succumb to it. But to go back,
you go to Vegas basketball.
So now I'm in Vegas. I'm working. Initially, I have an internship at this place, Impact Basketball. Impact Basketball is a training center that works with NBA players during the off season.
So I've heard a little bit about this from I'm a basketball junkie. All of the podcasts I listen to about these trainers, and it's like you never heard of these guys, but they work with all these pro athletes about like picking up, and we hear like, I mean, for the real basketball heads, it's like, just go down there and learn from Hakeem, learn the dream shake and all of this, but like learning like specific moves or adding specific things to their game is what I guess a basketball trainer, because you often think, especially men with our egos, it's like, what I'm going to learn from somebody from that ain't, you know what I'm saying? Like, what I'm going to learn from somebody that ain't, I think, 10 times better than me. And I've yet to meet an athlete that didn't think that they're better than everybody.
Yeah, facts. So what separated this particular performance center was the fact that it was so comprehensive. So it was now mind you, it's this huge state-of-the-art facility that had world-class weightlifting equipment, had kitchens with chefs on deck, had athletic training offices where people could handle their injuries. It had 2 NBA-length basketball courts, as well as rooms for recovery and rest. So it was an immensely comprehensive training center. Yet, to your point, a lot of people went there because of the owner, Joel Bunazar's initial first 2 clients. His first 2 clients were Kevin Garnett and Chauncey Billups. So that automatically stamped him as an authority to work with these type of athletes. And then from there, it expanded to Al Harrington, Tayshaun Prince, O.J. Mayo, Rudy Gay, J.R. Smith. I saw Paul Pierce. I saw all of these guys while I was working at this place. So as an assistant strength coach, I had the multiple duties of not only working directly with the athletes, but also making sure that I did whatever was needed. So that would sometimes lead us to work days from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in case the guys wanted to get into the gym and do whatever they needed to do. But
and let me give some more Detroit context to this too for people.
Yeah.
Because I know a person's watching like still ego, especially like any of the young kids. Like, I know how to hoop. Okay, the reason this even came into light like that actually deals directly with Detroit because my whole life, being born in 82, the greatest athlete always marketed to us was Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's biggest obstacle was the bad boy Detroit Pistons.
That's right.
And it's said to be that the thing that's made Michael Jordan strong enough to beat the Pistons was his trainer, Tim Grover. I actually got the book Rebound because this would be so weird. I got an auntie that would always buy me all this Michael Jordan stuff because she was from Flint. I mean, she was from Chicago and Flint. Both my aunties from there would give me all this Michael Jordan stuff. And it's like, I'm a Piston fan, but it eventually got to the point where it's like, I'm going to still like read through this stuff. So it's the Michael Jordan's trainer, Tim Grover, that was attributed at being this like phenomenal trainer. The same way Tom Brady's trainer is supposed to be like this phenomenal trainer for quarterbacks and football players. Like Tim Grover kind of built this wave and this arc of like, I can help all athletes become better. I personally think a lot of the reason the Bulls ended up beating the Pistons was because of the rule changes from the NBA, but that's a Corey Frazier, Detroit Piston, bad boys ever.
I agree.
Isaiah
bad boys
Thomas,
for life.
Best pound for pound basketball player ever. But now I want you to pick up your story there so that people can understand like the industry that becomes training basketball players, because they're like, well, if Jordan did this, hence if I can stay at the clip of Jordan, then that helps me. Also, now getting into the basketball business side of this too, for an athlete, if I go to this physical training facility and they have the X-ray, MRI machines, strength coach, conditioning coaches, now I can say, no, I was really injured based on my own information. And now this is going to impact like, how much I can play and where things are. It's mattering more and more as we go to have your own team around you, because it's also been like, these teams will evaluate like, you probably got like 3 more good seasons in you. We gonna cut you after 1 season and we get everything out of you. And a lot of players feel like they've been taken advantage of from the league. But
yeah, for sure. So one of the things that we would do was we would work with pre-draft players. So those were the guys that's coming out of college and or high school who were phenomenal, and they needed to improve different physical components for the draft and the assessment test that they would get from the NBA. Case in point, some guys need to improve the vertical jump, so that's why they would come to us. Some guys needed to improve the amount of muscle that they had on their body. That's why they'd come to us. Bench press, lane agility drills, all of these different metrics were going to where they placed in the draft. So performance centers like the one I worked at was the place that they would build up and improve upon before actually going to take those tests and get those metrics done. So it's very comprehensive. And you mentioned the business of basketball. We would see agents all around us all the time. We would see coaches all around us all the time, making sure that we were doing what we needed to do to make sure that they got the best product that they was going to pay for.
So working one-on-one with these players.
Well, we didn't too often work one-on-one unless somebody has some special things that they needed to work on.
Well, you working with the players.
Yeah.
What would you say is the big difference between that great basketball player like in the neighborhood? Because we all got that guy, it's like, man, he should have been in the league versus the guy in the league.
Numbers.
What you
Easy.
mean numbers?
So when I mean numbers, you only got 450 positions. So you got millions of basketball players that want to play at the highest level, but you only got 450 positions. So it's like this. I got this little bottle of water, right? So everybody is vying to be in the NBA, which is this little bottle of water. Now imagine me taking 2 gallons of water and pouring it in. Some of it is going to go in and it's going to fill up, but the rest of it is going to spill all over the place. The rest of us are the spillage all over the place.
So you think that would you say that it's comparable to a lot of that spillage could be in the NBA with the right opportunities, or like, what would you say?
Nope, you're not. Because even if you're phenomenal, which a lot of basketball players are, there just is not enough space for you. If 450 positions is all that they have, and there's now a global competition, so not only the best in Michigan going against the best in Chicago, going against the best in New York, going against the best in LA, but it's people from Yugoslavia. It's people from Australia that are good. It's people from China that are amazing. And everybody is trying to vie for this one little pot of jobs. It's just simply not enough jobs. So it's not you being good, it's you having a very finite, small amount of opportunity amongst an immense amount of competition.
So for the players that do make it, what's the difference?
Some of it is, so I'm going to go back to anatomy class. My anatomy teacher would often say, if you want to be a great athlete, choose your parents wisely. And I thought that was hilarious, and I also thought it was unfair, but that's the reality. Case in point, I'm gonna give a TMI experience that I had while working at Impact. I was talking on the phone one day, talking about my experience with all these great athletes and who we were working with, and my friend was enjoying the conversation. And I'm having this conversation while I'm going to the bathroom. Now I'm doing number 2. Still talking, I'm so excited. And I forgot that I used the players' bathroom. I'm 5'4". Everything in our facility was designed for somebody 6'7" and up. So I'm sitting on this toilet, talking on the phone, and I realized that my legs are dangling. And I realized, oh, wow, I got on the wrong toilet. I got on the athlete's toilet. I was supposed to get on the regular folk toilet. So these are people that's just not physically structured like regular human beings, one. So if you want to choose if you want to become a great athlete, choose your parents wisely. And 2, some of them are incredibly driven. So they'll be the ones that come and work out 7 a.m., got 3 or 4 workouts, strength workout, stretch workout. They're eating the right thing. They come back for games. They come back again for shots. So that's like that 1% that's just so driven that they annihilate any competition and they make themselves the most marketable. And, a lot of it is opportunity to finite amount of jobs. So I would say genetics. I would say work ethic, which is incredibly important. Then I would say access to opportunity.
So if for that parent watching or that kid, like, yo, I want to make the league, because I had this debate when I was in, and this kid felt like I was crushing his dreams. And he was a good wide receiver. But I was telling him, I'm like, man, from what I've seen, the trajectory of professional athlete usually start, like the Jimmy Butler stories are very rare. Like the trajectory of pro athlete kind of starts now, I would say maybe in like the 6th grade. And that may be a little late. It may start like 4th grade type, like your parent knows this person, knows that person. You're at the right AAU camps. You're connected to the right people. Technically, like if your position is the right, I'm reading a Grant Hill book too. Like if you're the right position in the right region at the right time against the other right competition, another great podcast, I'm a basketball junkie, was Tracy McGrady was just talking about, like, yeah, man, I was in the middle of Florida and we're just not known for good basketball players. It just so happened that 4 alternates fell out of the ABCD Adidas camp at the year that I went. So that's what put me in the world of even being able to play at the right time at that right moment. But it was his position, because if he'd have been a different position, he wouldn't have been able to even get the opportunity.
Yep. Luck. So that's a 4th. So we got genetics, we got work ethic, we got opportunity, and then we got luck.
So with it, and then that focus and everything, what about some of the other alternatives? The guys that go overseas and play, the guys that end up in coaching, like it's not just the league, or possibly end up in management or in what other opportunities exist for that player that was so focused on playing and still picked up a lot of basketball knowledge? Is it still enough of an industry for that player to end up with some opportunity?
Man, there's immense opportunity. Case in point, I love basketball more than basketball was life for me. And eventually it led into me getting a career in basketball, literally in NBA. My cousin that was like my brother, Daryl King, he's an ancestor now. But I was talking on the phone with him while at work, and he was like, man, your ass found a way to get to the NBA. I said, wow, I didn't look at it like that, but I guess I did. So you can work in the field of a strength coach. You can work in the field of a therapist. You can work in the field of nutrition. You can work as an agent. You can work in management. You can work in logistics. You can work in advertising. You can work in journalism. There is an immense amount of opportunity in that particular realm from different parts of professional careers. So you can do whatever it is that you want to do. Honestly, it's just a matter of what are you committed to, how committed are you, and how far are you willing to go.
So with that, now, how do you end up back in Detroit from Vegas, man? Because Vegas, and shout out my man Mayo and everything out there. He been holding down Vegas for a while. There's a couple of Detroiters out there, but Vegas is such a different place to be. You know what I'm saying? As they say, it's a 3-day town, because if you're in Vegas for more than a couple of days, hopefully you ain't at that dice table. But you know what I'm saying? Like the culture is just so different, being such a huge tourist destination for what Vegas has. What led you back to Detroit?
Yeah, so Vegas was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a place that I ever thought that I would be at permanently.
Mm-hmm.
It was a cool place. Clearly, my career was great.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, I still wanted more. So as an assistant, I didn't necessarily get the biggest paycheck, so to speak. So I had to make sure that I could still take care of everything I need to take care of. So I put my name out there, and eventually I got recruited back to Michigan to work at one of our big chain gyms. And at the same time, I had an opportunity to work for a budding Impact basketball that was growing here in Michigan.
Wow.
So they wanted me to come here and help grow that company because of my ties and my networks in the basketball community. At the same time, this other big chain gym wanted me to work there as well, and they offered me, some decent money. So came back here. I'm working both, and at the same time, I'm still getting independent contract work at a baseball performance center in Kego Harbor. So I'm literally developing a huge name and buzz around everything that I acquired from working at Impact. And we're growing this Impact here. We had camps. Our biggest camp, and the camp that I was very, very proud of, was the one that we did with the Crawford family, Joe and Jordan Crawford.
Yeah, shout out Joe Crawford, Renaissance legend.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I just was at Craig Cafe about 2 weeks ago.
I saw that they opened it up, had the ribbon cutting, and like our paths crossed because my Track Cave rap days was with Rip, which off Rip meaning Richard Harrison, Malik Harrison's brother. So I remember those days, and they used to be like, "Oh man, you don't like it," because DeCardo Billings, I remember him from Central, and they'd be like, "How you like DeCardo like that?" I'm like, "I don't know, man. DeCardo got some game, but hell of a renaissance, like Joe and Malik." Heck of a team right there, Mark White squad for Renaissance.
Yeah, that team was amazing. And, again, paths crossing. One of their teammates, Marcus Stout, he started to work with me at the Impact in Michigan. And we started to grow and expand that. And his relationship with the Crawford was the reason that we ran their basketball camps.
Okay.
Shout out to Marcus. That's my guy.
Okay.
That's my brother right there. But, so we growing the company here. And for me, even though it's growing and it's budding and the word is spreading, I had a situation happen where a young man from our area, Detroit metropolitan area, he went to Lake Orion. But he wanted to be a part of our prep school. So if you're not familiar with prep school, it's like an extra year in between high school and college. In fact, Jalen Crawford was the star of our prep school team at Impact in Las Vegas. But that's the younger brother, the Crawford's youngest brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, this dude, he could fly. He had a 44-inch vertical.
Wow.
Yeah, he could fly. But anyway, so there's a young man that wants to attend the academy in Las Vegas. So I got to meet with his grandfather. So him and the grandfather coming to the gym. I got the brochures ready. I got all these images of these great clients that we have that play in the NBA. And we having this discussion, and the granddad says, okay, so this brochure is nice. I see you guys work with all these athletes. I see you got this fun, nice, fancy place. But you expect me to pay $30,000 for my 5'7" grandson to learn how to dribble a basketball? And in that moment, I was embarrassed. I felt awkward. I was disappointed in myself because I hadn't been able to see the big picture.
Yeah.
And that made me think, what am I really doing?
Mm-hmm.
And that changed my trajectory from just focusing on athletics to I have to make an imprint in the community, and this has to be way bigger than anything dealing with basketball. And that's how the organization Phase Forward got started. And when I first came in, I was on a Zoom call with a philanthropic organization talking about Phase Forward. Phase Forward is a youth development organization that I founded. I work with some tremendous people around the city, but it's based on the 4 principles of economics, education, entertainment, and exercise. Last 2, exercise and entertainment, kids vibe to that. They enjoy that. They enjoy going to basketball games. They enjoy going to movies. They enjoy all the fun stuff. But the first 2 is what the adults know are super important, economics and education. We marry those principles, we bring them together, and we're able to give the kids the information that they need, along with giving them the fun things that they want to do. So develop that from that particular conversation with that grandfather, because I saw that I wasn't doing nearly enough of what I needed to do.
That's deep. So since then, working in this space of work, community work, which brings us to the documentary.
Yes, sir.
What led for you to start this documentary process? 7 years working on it, man.
Yeah, so everything aligned the way that it was supposed to in a way that's way beyond me. So I had that experience, and I'm working with children now. One of my kids, he just called me one day, and he was like, Tob, can I just come hang out with you? I was like, well, Kobe, I'm not going to be in the gym today. He's like, that's okay. Can I just come hang out with you?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, wow. He just literally just want to hang out and be around me. I was like, okay, me and my boy Vondell from D.C., because Vondell Williams, our operation manager, lives in D.C. now, we were attending a film screening of a film called Out of Darkness by my man Amadeus Christ. If you're not familiar with Amadeus Christ's work, just think Spike Lee / Picasso / Jay Dilla working in the film industry.
Mm-hmm.
This brother is a true Imhotep, a true multi-genius. And we were attending his screening at Nandy's Knowledge Cafe.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the young man that wanted to hanging out with me. We watched the film, and it was around the time of Hidden Colors.
Mm-hmm.
So this is around the time that everybody is getting into all of this scholarly information from these docs. And his doc was amazing in terms of his content, yet the visuals, the auditory, the pictures, the animations, it was something I had never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, this is different.
Mm-hmm.
So me and the brother, we connected, we built a relationship, and I pitched the idea of talking about our city. And I told him about Paradise Valley, and I was like, man, we should do a short about it, like 5-6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, nah, I want to do a whole documentary about that.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And he's a brother from the Bay Area. He's from that Oakland area. So as we all know, Detroit and Oakland are.
Yeah, we are so adjacent. Definitely. Shout out to Davey D, the great hip hop historian. I always sometimes text him some different things like, "Hey, this happening. You know, it looks like we probably are. This will probably be out after, but it looks like possibly a football game will be coming up for Bay versus Detroit as well.
That'd be interesting.
Yes, definitely.
So we got that Bay Area Detroit connection. We connected on that. And then we went into it after that. So I would do extensive research on the city. I met with historians like Dale Rich, Orland Jones, rest in peace, another ancestor. He was referred to as the king of Conant. So he gave us extensive information on Conant Gardens.
Oh, yeah.
Sharon Sexton, the head of the Black Historic Sites Committee at the Detroit Historical Museum. So all of these different people, Kathy House from Masala, she introduced me to other scholars, and all of these different people just embraced me. I mean, like, the community embraced me and held me tight and said, we gonna help you tell this story in a way that hasn't been told before.
So in doing this over the span of 7 years, because sometimes projects like this take a long time, how has it changed your view of looking at the city?
It made everything clear. So it made the 80s situation clear. It made the lack of resources that my peer groups in my same environment had at their schools, it made that clear. it gave clarity to why we love fur coats.
Mm.
This was a prominent fur trading area.
Mm-hmm.
So the French that settled the area would buy furs or take furs in some instances from the indigenous population here, sell them to France. So all of that, even the name Cadillac, the quote unquote founder of Detroit, Antoine de la Motte Cadillac, the Cadillac car that a lot of us love and aspire to came from this person.
Mm-hmm.
So it just gave me all of these clear connections that history applies to our contemporary environment, and it just made everything crystal clear to me.
So even in that, like, how have like in discovering a lot of these stories, and now you have this piece. What's your goal with the documentary?
Man, great question. So the goal with this documentary is to be an educational tool for our children. So as you can see, I'm wearing the continent because I'm representing Alkebu-Lan Village, 7701 Harper. I'm the youth coordinator over there, and we do everything culture. And we know that understanding who you are, how great you have been, gives you the cultural armor to navigate this current space. So with that said, Walk Through the Valley is an educational tool for DPSCD schools in particular, for Michigan students in general. But I want this to be an informational component that every school has at their disposal, and the children get to see their local history and actually be able to see tangible items directly connected to things that happened hundreds of years ago. So now you're going to know why Detroit is named Detroit. Now you're going to know about the indigenous population that was here before it was named Detroit. Now you're going to know about a business district called Paradise Valley where there were over 400 businesses. Now you're going to know why Detroit has been isolated and kind of segregated systemically by a lot of people that practice institutional environment in the surrounding area. You're going to know all of this stuff. You're going to know, in fact, I'm going to hold that off. I'm not going to give you one of the big things in the film, but you're going to know a lot about things that you see every day in Detroit.
I love it. I love it. So how do I see it? When do I see it? What's
all right,
happening?
so we have a private screening coming up February 11th. We're really trying to limit the amount of people because we only have 140 seats at the Detroit Historical Museum.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to send some invites out. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, is it a way that you can put my information?
Yeah, I'll put it in the lower third.
Yep. So you're gonna see my information on Detroit is Different podcast. I would say get in contact with me. Try to get seated while you can. We're doing a crowdfunding campaign right now. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to generate as much income as we can, not only for the film, not only to finish it in completion, but also to do the programs that we want for the children. So we want to make sure that our children not only have access to the information, but also curate programs around it to keep them absolutely excited. So we need the community's help. So we're going to do this screening in February. We're going to do another screening directly for our children in March on 313 Day. We're going to do another screening on Detroit's birthday. That's July 24th. And the ultimate goal is to rent out this huge venue to have thousands of children from our school come out and see the film March 13th, 2025.
I like it. Let's make it happen, my brother. Let's make it happen. So with that being said, that's been a great Detroit is Different. It's like my new questions. I got to evaluate my new questions. People getting stumped on it. I'll run it by you, though. What's your favorite adjective?
What's yours?
All right, it changes every day, but right now I'm going with I'm gonna shout out Big E and everything. Copacetic. We're gonna go with that right now.
So
Copacetic.
Anybody that knows me, they know that my greatest philosophical teacher is Neely Fuller Jr. And whenever I'm asked how I'm doing, I have two words: still learning.
That's deep. Okay. Dr. Neely Fuller, that's a heavy one right there. He's the master teacher for, rest in peace, the great Dr. Amos Wilson, and rest in peace, the great Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, the master teacher for both of them. And his story is very impactful for people. If you don't know Neely Fuller, glad you brought him up, but study some Neely Fuller to just understand like how a day-to-day brother launched himself into the intellectualism. I'm gonna use that of academia to navigate the impacts of systemic racism. So a lot of the arc of when we think of white supremacy and the talking points that I think that many people may talk around and speak of and other works come directly off that origin tree of Dr. Neely Fuller. So,
and he's hilarious. So
Yeah.
in my conversations with him, we have literally 40 minutes of just jokes. He's funny. He's funny. So therein lies the importance of finding humor, finding fun, and finding levity in this very heavy predicament that we have, because the ultimate goal is to, like he says, the 5 words, replace white supremacy with justice, yet we still got to have fun, in my opinion. So, yep. In fact, with that said, if you don't mind me saying this, I have a book coming out called The G Code. So it's called The G Code, How to Identify, Counter, and Eventually End Black-on-Black Crime.
Interesting.
That book is heavily doused in Fuller-isms because of the fortunate experiences that I've had with meeting him and studying his work. And I also had the very, very fortunate opportunity to meet with Dr. Wells in person and have a very in-depth conversation with her. And she gave me some incredible jewels, one of which I'm going to leave the audience with, which is, quote, "Be responsible for the land that your 2 feet stands upon," end quote.
That's deep. That's deep. Yeah, man. You've walked with some heavyweights in this world, man, of this work. So that's powerful, man.
Appreciate that, bro.
That's Black empowerment and basketball. You know what I'm saying? You know, I wish you'd threw a water bottle at Paul Pierce. I'm just messing.
Man, hey, look.
Still mad at the truth for all them years, Piston years.
Yeah, Truth gave us some buckets.
You know, it's like just being a Detroiter and being black, just seeing a Celtic jersey make you be like, still bother me, some of them people that were Celtic fans for a couple years.
Man, you so dope, though, because you said that Isaiah Thomas is the greatest player ever, pound for pound.
Yeah, I think so.
People don't understand what Isaiah meant to us, bro. He had a whole theme song.
Oh yeah. I mean, but I mean, just when you look at it, you're gonna get me on my rant, and I'm gonna close out on this one. But like when you look at it, and this is what's so funny, and shout out Keith Bennett, because Keith Bennett is like, well, Isaiah wouldn't even say that. And I love Keith. That's the big homie. But he took on Jordan in his prime.
Facts.
Magic in his prime.
Facts.
Bird in his prime.
Facts.
Dominique in his prime. Like, he took on the arcs of different success. And then at his height, they say 6'1", but I mean, people may say 6, but like, he was, I think if you, in this argument, one day I'm going to be interviewing Isaiah, but like, if you put any other player on that team, they're not getting 2 championships, possibly 1. And if you put Isaiah on that Celtics team, and I mean, Lord knows, it's like, this sentence is about to hurt me. Larry Bird's a hell of a player. That's a sentence that hurts me. But Larry Bird on that Piston team is not winning 2 championships. Magic, hell of a player. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love Magic, you know. East Lansing, you know what I mean? Just, you know, Showtime. But
don't do that, Kyrie. Don't do that, Kyrie. I see where you're going. Don't do that.
Winning 2 championships on that Pistons squad.
Ooh.
Jordan ain't winning 2 championships on that Pistons squad. I'm saying pound for pound. And like Isaiah even says, if he'd have had Magic's height, it's a if. The closest thing to it was kind of with Ivo, and I love Allen Iverson too, but like even that like he couldn't get that done. It's like Isaiah's presence, he would drive the lane, he controlled the offense, he would defend the toughest players. I mean, like, you know, phenomenal. to the point where, he took on the best of the NBA at the time. The only player that I think would have possibly been able to possibly win the two would be LeBron. But that's an argument for another day.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today